What's up, Star Wars nerds, and welcome to another episode of Brett on Fett. On today's episode, I'm going to be counting down my top 10 vintage collection figures for 2022. Plus, I've got some Christmas pickups to share. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the channel. This is episode 45 of Brett on Fett, and it's the first episode of the new year, 2023. Today is New Year's Day. I want to wish you guys a very happy new year, and I hope you had a great holiday. So thanks for joining me, and thanks for supporting me in my first year of my channel. I did start my channel way back in January of 2022, so it's basically almost been a year, and it's been one of the best things I've done because of all the Star Wars collectors I have gotten to know out there. So it's been great. So thanks again. And before we get into my top 10 vintage collection figures of the year, I first want to share with you just a few Christmas pickups I got. So like I said, just a few Christmas pickups I wanted to share with you guys. There was actually one big Christmas present, which was actually a gift to myself that I would love to have shown you, but it seems to be currently lost in the mail somewhere. So hopefully that arrives someday and I'll have to show you on a future episode because it is a grail item for me at least. So first off, I've been wanting to get a loose 3 3/4 prototype Fett for my loose collection and just didn't want to pay the prices for the TVC mail away version. So I was able to pick up the blackseries 3 3/4 version, which is the same exact figure just repacked in that very non-special box. His weapons are kind of interesting, a lot different than what he normally carries. He comes with this little tiny blaster that has that extended stock, and it doesn't really fit right in the holster. You have to kind of turn it backwards to make use of the little slot in the front, which is kind of strange. And since I didn't have this guy loose before, I'd never noticed that his white cape has this little pattern on the end of it, so that's kind of interesting. But pretty cool figure, and happy to add him to my loose collection of other Boba Fetts. Next, I got a droid I've been wanting for a long time. This is R1G4 from A New Hope. This is from the 2004 Saga line. And what an awesome droid. He's from that scene where the Jawas are selling various droids to Owen Lars outside of the Sandcrawler. Just a really cool droid. I'm trying to decide if I want to take him out of the packaging. Normally, I don't take 3 3/4 scale figures out of the packaging unless I have doubles of them, which I don't in this case. But on the other hand, this Saga series that came out between 2002 and 2004 has some of the most boring card backs in the history of modern Star Wars figures, in my opinion, so most likely I will take them out. Next up, I already had Bo-Katan and Koska Reeves for the Black Series, so I had to go ahead and get Axe Woves to complete the trio. And he's a great figure. His helmet is not oversized like he is on the TVC version, and his subsculpt's pretty good. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this guy. I think his gun is a little puny compared to the size of the figure, but I think that's screen accurate, so I can't complain too much. Next, I got the Mountain Trooper from the Black Series. This is from that Galaxy's Edge line of figures, and so this is technically a sequel trilogy figure. It is a First Order Trooper, although he never appeared in any films or series that I'm aware of. And I just love the design though, because he looks like he could have been snuck into Rogue One because he's so similar to the Shore Trooper design. And the Shore Trooper is one of my favorite Trooper designs. So naturally, I do love this Mountain Trooper despite it being a sequel trilogy figure. I think it looks awesome. So very happy to add this guy to my collection. Next up, I'm a huge fan of the Thrawn trilogy of books by Timothy Zahn. Heir to the Empire is the first book in that series. And so I also pre-ordered the Mara Jade that's coming out in this comic book, publishing series. And so I had to have the Luke Skywalker to go with the Mara Jade. And so I really wanted this one, and a very good friend of mine picked it up for me for Christmas. I just love the artwork on these publishing series figures. And opening it up, you can see it's got some really cool artwork from the comic book version of Heir to the Empire. And it's not a bad figure. It actually is a pretty good looking Luke. And it comes with the Salamari lizard alien, as well as Luke's lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. And finally, this is technically not a Christmas pickup because it just came in yesterday. This is the comic book cover Pop series Boba Fett. I'm not a big Pops collector. I've got a few here and there, but being a big Boba Fett fan, I had to order this one. It's just really cool with that combination of the comic book cover and the pop, and it comes in a little acrylic case, which is a nice little touch. It is a Walmart exclusive, but it did arrive in pretty decent shape. Alright, so now it's time to go over my top 10 vintage collection figures for 2022. But first, I want to give you some ground rules on how I came up with this list. First and foremost, this is my personal list for my top 10. This is not based on sales or any voting. This is strictly my opinion on what I thought were the 10 best figures. Secondly, I am factoring in the card backs with these, but not as weighted as the figure themselves. So basically, I'm counting the figure score twice and the card back once. Next, as far as which figures qualify for 2022, I'm basing it off of the waves that were available through retailers in the United States. And so the earliest wave I have by my records for 2022 is that Clone Wars, the Tartakovsky Clone Wars wave that had the ARC Troopers and Ayla Secura, Barriss Offee, and the B-1 Battle Droid. Those are the first eligible set of figures for 2022. The wave that contained Bo-Katan and Lobot, etc. By my records, most of those I was able to get in November and December of 2021, so I'm counting those as the last wave of 2021, even though officially they may be considered the first wave of 2022. But I'm not counting that wave. We're starting with the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, and the last wave to make it eligible for 2022 is the Obi-Wan Kenobi 3-pack. So that's going to be the latest wave by my records that was available in the United States through regular retailers. Next, probably an obvious one, but I'm not going to be counting any reissue figures. No reissue figures that came out in 2022. By the way, as I'm editing this video, I wanted to let you guys know that I'm currently running a poll on the community tab of my YouTube channel for your favorite reissue figure of 2022. So go to the community tab, take that poll, and let me know what your favorite reissue figure was of 2022. Thanks. But I will be counting repaints. So if there's a figure that is a kit bash or a straight repaint from a previously released figure that came out in a previous year, I'm still counting it for 2022. My list, my rules. And finally, for this top 10, I am not counting any deluxe packs, such as the Boba Fett Tatooine or the very new Dark Trooper that is just now coming into the United States. I'm not counting any specialty waves, such as the Droids wave that had the C-3PO, R2-D2, and Boba Fett. I'm only counting the traditional carded vintage collection figures that have VC numbers on the back. It's got to have a VC number on the back, or I'm not counting it for this particular top 10. And that should cover it, so let's take a look at what I came up with. Alright, so when I figured out my ratings, I actually ended up with a 3-way tie for 11th place, so I decided to go ahead and mention these 3 as honorable mentions. Starting with the ARC Trooper Captain from the Tartakovsky Clone Wars. I'm a huge fan of that 2D Clone Wars series, so naturally I love this guy. He looks really cool. He is a dated figure, but still very awesome. They reused him from that original Expanded Universe release of the ARC Trooper Captain, and the card back here looks great as well. Very good image taken from the show. Next up, I had Costco Reeves. I think this is a very underrated figure. Of course, she does use the same body mold from Bo-Katan, but with just different paint apps. But the face sculpt looks very good. And I think it's a really underrated card back. I think this card back is awesome. I love the image. I don't care if it's photoshopped or whatever. I think it looks great. So that helped move this figure up to 11th place. And then finally, the most recent figure on my entire list is the Purge Trooper from the Obi-Wan Kenobi 3-pack. Just an awesome figure and a great image. Man, I love this card back image. So the combination of cool figure and awesome card back image helped bump this guy up to 11th place and honorable mention. Alright, so kicking off the top 10, I have another recent figure. This is the Magna Guard from Jedi Survivor. This is a kit bash of the original Magna Guard released under the Revenge of the Sith card. And I just love droids, man. I'm a sucker for droids, and so I had to get one on the list. And I just think he's really cool. I think this is an example of a kit bash or a repaint done right. It looks good. The card back image looks pretty cool. There's a look at the back. You can see it's VC 188, and I just love it. I think it's a great droid. I don't think many people will have this guy on their top 10s, probably because he is a kit bash, but for me, he ranked well enough as a figure and as a card back to make it into my top 10. Next up at number 9, I have Reva, the third sister from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Regardless of what you think about this character from the show, you have to admit that it is a well done figure. This was an entirely new mold, and look at the face sculpt. It's just amazing what they did with a 3 3/4 scale figure to match the likeness of the actress. The mold is very good, and it comes with a ton of accessories, both types of lightsabers, ignited, unignited, you name it. A lot is there. So there's a lot to like about this figure. It just looks great. And then the card back image is very good as well. It doesn't look too photoshopped. It looks like it could have been taken on set or from the show, in my opinion. And so very good looking card back. Excellent figure. You can see it is VC 242. There's a look at the back of the card. But again, an excellent figure that really deserves to be on anyone's top 10 of the year, in my opinion, regardless of what you think about the character. Next at number 8 is my first Mandalorian of my top 10. This is the Mandalorian Super Commando from the Clone Wars. A really awesome figure with awesome paint apps. Let me grab him loose. I just love the paint on this guy. The chest plate, just kind of the bleeding red. The jetpack has a nice color. The holsters are the only weak thing about this. They're very hard plastic and it's hard to fit the guns in there. But the helmet paint app, maybe my favorite painted helmet of the year with that handprint. It looks so good. The thing that hurt this figure for me was the card back. I am not a fan of this particular card back. It's really dark and it's just not great. So it kind of hurt his score and brought him down to number 8. But otherwise, an excellent figure. At number 7, I have Fennec Shand from the Book of Boba Fett, the only traditionally carded Book of Boba Fett figure we have. And this is an awesome figure, guys. Entirely new sculpt. Look at the head sculpt on there. It's amazing. She just looks so awesome. I love everything about this figure. And a neat little bonus feature that not everybody knows about. She has a swappable head with a helmet, but what's really cool is the ponytail can actually detach from the head and then be reattached to the back of the helmet, so you can maintain her ponytail with both looks. So that's a really cool feature. Hasbro really thought of everything with this figure, and that's what we like to see. Innovation, creativity on these figures, and not just something that is there to make a profit or maximize profit. So great figure. We'll take a look at the card back. It's a very good image as well. So really, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking maybe I ranked her a little too low. I do the ratings independently of one another and then just go with what I came up with. And she did place barely 7th, but she probably could easily rank as high as 5th on this list. You can see it's VC221, and there's a look at the back of the card. But excellent figure to get for 2022. Next up at number 6, I have the Mandalorian Super Commando Captain from the Clone Wars. Man, that name is a mouthful. And I just love the look of this figure. His helmet is so awesome with the spikes. And he's also got the spikes on the pauldrons, which are flexible to allow for more, posability. I like the paint apps used on the jetpack. The rest of it is basically exactly the same mold as the other Mandalorian we saw, but he just looks so awesome, and I love the card back too. I think there's a lot of people that don't care for this card back. I think it looks too photoshopped, but I just think he looks awesome in that image. So he ranked really well as a figure and a card back. You can see it's VC 246. So again, a great Mandalorian figure, very awesome looking, so one of my favorites of the year. And cracking open the top 5, at number 5 is the Death Watch Mandalorian from the show The Mandalorian. This was the first of all these Mandos we got in 2022, and I just love the color scheme on this guy. He looks great. His rangefinder is articulated, which is awesome. I love his holster there. A very superior holster to those hard plastic ones used on the other Mandos, by the way. He's got a great little blaster rifle there, and he's just overall a really good looking Mandalorian. And maybe my favorite part about this figure is the card back. This is one of my favorite card backs of all the vintage collection. What an excellent image there with these sparks flying behind him. You can see it's VC 219, and there's a look at the wave he came in on the back. And just, man, I couldn't be happier with this figure. He is awesome. So a very well-deserved number 5 on my list. Alright, this is where it gets really tough. My top 4, you can make an argument for any one of these to be figure of the year. Ultimately, I think the card backs factoring in helped make the difference. But starting with number 4, I have the VC 231 Stormtrooper from A New Hope. What an excellent Stormtrooper. You could say this is the definitive Stormtrooper we've gotten. Finally, he looks excellent. I can't find anything wrong with this Stormtrooper. He just looks great. I mean, everything's into proportion. There's nothing that sticks out as being a little off. And we've been waiting to get him on the regular A New Hope Star Wars card back. This is what we should have gotten to begin with. But maybe the silver lining is that they waited till they got the best Stormtrooper ever to put it on this classic card back. It is VC 231. And just a relief to get this finally on that card back. And I think ultimately he fell to number 4 because I tried to grade the card back for what it is and not factor in the nostalgia factor that it's such a classic card back. I just went with the image itself, grading on an equal level with new and classic card backs. So I think ultimately that brought that figure down to number 4. But it's still a very, very close number 4. And again, could be figure of the year. At number 3, I have the Mandalorian Death Watch Airborne Trooper from the Clone Wars. Another name with a mouthful of words. This is VC 247. Man, I love these Mandalorian figures, and this one is my favorite. The paint apps are awesome. I love the colors on this. Of course, he's got the articulated rangefinder. But just the paint colors used, I'm a sucker for blue, I guess. But just the combination of blue and gunmetal gray and the little hints of red on the emblems and stuff. The jetpack color looks great. It's just an awesome Mandalorian. I'm so happy with all these Mandalorians, and this is my favorite. So it had to be up here, ranked pretty high. And the card back looks great too. It's just a really cool looking image of him. Great colors. You can see it's VC 247. And there is the wave on the back. I'm just so pleased with these Mandalorian figures we got this year. And this is by far my favorite of all of them. So he had to be in my top 3. At number 2 for figure of the year, I have the Darth Vader, the Dark Times from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. I'll probably take a little heat for putting him at number 2, but I'll explain in a minute why I did that. But let's first revel in how awesome of a figure this is. This is by far the best Darth Vader we've ever gotten in 3 3/4 scale. He's just perfect. I can't find anything wrong with him. This is a must-have figure for any TVC collector. The cloth goods, the mold. He's an entirely new sculpt. He looks excellent. Unfortunately, the thing that knocked him down to number 2 for me is the card back image. I'm not a huge fan of this card back. There's just not enough contrast. It's very dark. On camera, it doesn't look bad. It looks a lot lighter on camera, but in hand, sitting on my shelf, it's very dark. And so that was the deciding factor to knock him down from number 2. If I was just going by the figure itself, I'm confident I would have put him at number 1. But he was a very close number 2, and it was because of the card back. But what an amazing, amazing Vader. Very pleased with this figure. And by now, you've probably figured out my number 1. It is the VC 252 Boba Fett Morak from the Mandalorian series. I really didn't want to just put a Boba Fett at number 1 because I'm bred on Fett and Boba Fett's my focus character. This is a well-deserved number 1. This is not because of a bias. This is because it is an excellent figure with an excellent card back. And it's just an amazing figure. I love the combination of the cloth goods The helmet is a perfect size. The head sculpt is excellent. It's just an amazing head sculpt for 3 3/4. I mean, look at that. The likeness is just amazing. And again, the helmet, it fits really snug and it's a great size. It's not too big, it's not too small. It's a perfect size. Great articulation, great details on this figure. And what set him above the Vader was the card back. I couldn't have chosen a better image for the card back on this figure. I love everything about it. It's taken from the show. It's not photoshopped. You can see VC252 on the back, and there's a look at the other figures that came out around the same time. This was a Target exclusive, which is kind of a bummer, but it's just an excellent figure. I have no complaints about this guy. Excellent figure, excellent card back. So he just barely notched out Vader for Figure of the Year 2022. So here's one more look at my top 4 figures of 2022 that were just so hard to rank amongst each other. Again, you can make an argument for any of these 4 to be Figure of the Year, although probably the most popular choice would be the Vader for most people. Kudos to Hasbro for putting out these awesome figures in 2022. Let's hope for more quality figures such as these in 2023. Alright, so that's going to do it for this episode of Brett on Fett. Let me know in the comments what you thought about my top 10 and what your favorite TVC figures were for 2022. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you to my subscribers. Don't forget you can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter. Take care, and we'll see you next time.